this is, and I'm just going to freeform this because I had a remarkable thing happen to me yesterday on the streets of Wellington. And you won't have seen the wider context of this in any mainstream news media. I've been looking for it this morning, but there was nothing. Because there was no coverage yesterday of the 76th anniversary of the creation of the democratic state of Israel, 76 years ago. That wasn't covered by the media, even though Israel is very much in the news at the moment. It wasn't covered by our mainstream media. And no other journalist attended or covered the celebration or reception held yesterday on the terrace in Wellington at the Wellington Club by the Israeli embassy and the Israeli ambassador, a reception to mark the birthday of Israel. I was invited and I was happy to accept that invitation. Part of being a journalist is developing relationships with people and speaking to all sorts of people from all walks of life. So I was more than happy to go along to this celebration. I was disappointed, I guess, as a New Zealander, that not one single MP was there from the coalition government. They'd all been invited. There was not one single cabinet minister there to represent New Zealand at another nation's National Day in the capital of New Zealand, the political capital of New Zealand. So no government ministers, no government MPs. The Mayor of Wellington, where the event was being held, she didn't attend. I would say 4 of her councillors did, including Ray Chung, the man who has thrown his hat into the ring. And it was nice to see you in a social context, Ray. Good to bump into you at the Israeli embassy yesterday. It was a very pleasant event. There were many other diplomats there from other countries representing their countries in New Zealand. There were members of the Jewish community in New Zealand. There were people of all faiths. And it was a very pleasant event. I might have had a couple of glasses of Sauvignon Blanc. And it was respectful and dignified. Unfortunately, what happened outside on the streets of Wellington, a sort of flash mob protest by the usual suspects, waving Palestinian flags and chanting, and they kept up. The only report I could find is on a lefty site called Scoop. And Scoop said there were 80 protesters who, it didn't say that they dispersed, 100 people outside. And God, the bias of their reporting, approximately 100 people of many faiths and cultural backgrounds rallied today, Thursday, on the street outside the Wellington Club. They held a noisy but peaceful demonstration against the ongoing genocide, which there isn't, being carried out by the State of Israel, condemning the Israeli ambassador who was hosting an invitation-only event to celebrate the establishment of the State of Israel. No, there weren't. There were about 50 to 80 of them. They weren't people of many faiths. They were people of little intelligence. And it wasn't peaceful. It was disruptive of the peace, and it was obnoxious and offensive and irrational. The do went on inside. I walked in through the crowd. Someone offered me someone waved a flag in my face and offered me a flyer or something, to which I suggested that they intercourse off. So I went in, did the cookie push for an hour and a half, and I exit the building. And as I come out, they're still there with their whistles, their loud hailers and their sirens, and there is a significant police presence. That's the term, isn't it? A significant police presence. I smile. I look at them. I was really disappointed. Some of them, there were 2 people there when I first arrived who were in their graduation gowns. But I think, I'll just sit down and watch what's happening on the streets of Wellington. So I sit down on a little brick wall. There's a big Pahutakawa tree outside the Wellington Club. And I am surrounded by people pointing their phones at me, screaming, blood on your hands, blood on your hands. Then I think the penny drops. They figure that I might be Sean Plunket. and they start chanting in unison, F off Sean, F off Sean. And they come towards me and surround me. No one touches me, but man, they are right in my face, right in my grill. And at this stage, the police who are there kind of form a cordon around me. But funnily enough, they're not looking out at the people who are threatening and literally assaulting me. You don't have to hit someone to be assaulted. In a street in broad daylight. They look at me as if I'm doing something wrong. Sitting there on a brick wall in a public place, not saying anything. Not screaming in anyone's face. Not saying murderer. Not telling anyone to F off or there's blood on their hands. And the cops ask me to move on. And I say, I'm just sitting here minding my own business. Yes, but you're making our job very difficult. Well, I would have thought your job would be to maintain the peace, which you weren't. But on a human level, I could see the concern and tension amongst the police who were surrounding me. And I said, all right, mate, but this is ridiculous. And I didn't whip out my phone and film everyone. I'm not a teenager who needs to get hits on TikTok. So I walked down the street and crossed the street, and I was pursued by a couple of these morons, waving flags and screaming on your hands at me. I turned around to one of them who pursued me all across the street, and I just stopped and kind of looked into the face of, it was like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It was like a zombie convention. The guy he was literally in some sort of weird frenzy of hate. And he suggested, everyone was telling me I had blood on my hands. I looked at my hands, they seemed clean. I'd been to the loo, I'd washed afterwards. And I suggested that he had excrement in his brains. Nothing, no response. He was just then in the hate, as I said, this hate loop. I guess this is happening to people all around the world every day. But I just want to say to those protesters, you're not players in this. You're not on one side or the other. You're non-playing characters who do not have the brains that God gave a mule. You didn't protest peacefully yesterday. You impinged on and damaged my freedoms as a citizen of New Zealand and the freedoms of many other New Zealanders. And whilst I have sympathy for the police who get caught in the middle, I wasn't the person who needed to be moved on. And they weren't protesters. They were anarchists and rabble-rousers. They are the people you should have been arresting in large numbers. They were the ones disturbing the peace. They were the ones assaulting me by robbing me of my freedom to walk the streets of my city in public places and not be molested and assaulted and screamed at by a bunch of cookers.